Okay, so here we have the a synchronous version of our website service client, right? Which is just returning a hard-coded value of websites. Instead, we want us to go fetch this from the server, right? So to do that, we're going to need a couple of HTTP-related services, right? That can generate these HTTP requests, right? For that, we're going to ask in the constructor for our service. We're going to create a constructor and say, I need you to inject an HTTP service that knows how to do this, right? We're going to load it up, and there it is, our HTTP. Okay, so we're asking for the singleton HTTP service that knows how to generate gets, posts, puts, deletes, everything that has to do with HTTP, right? Send cookies, send headers, everything that has to do with the HTTP protocol, right? It's all encapsulated in that one service, okay? Additionally, I'm going to import the low-level RJX RX library, right? That deals with the low-level AJAX mechanism, right? Which is being abstracted by the HTTP service. Okay, so I don't have to deal with the low-level handshaking and communication protocol of the low-level AJAX protocol. It's all being encapsulated under the HTTP request over here. All right, so now that I have that, what I'd like to be able to do here, instead of just returning this hard-coded list of websites, what I'd like to be able to do is go out to the server to go fetch these, right? So we're going to use the HTTP service that we just injected, all right? And I want to generate a get. I want to generate a get to the server, right? But I need a URL. So let's build a URL. It'll be constant. The URL will be, I'm going to go out to my server, which is http:// I think it's listening. Where's it listening? Local host, right? It's listening at 3100, I believe, right? Now, typically, I don't need to put the domain here or even HTTP. It's enough to give a relative path. But locally here, since we have Angular running on 4200 and we have our server running on 3100. Okay, here we need to be able to make the distinction. I don't want to access the server where Angular, the Angular node server is running. Instead, I want to access the API that is running on my Node.js. Yes? So here's where the distinction happens. Right? When we deploy this on Heroku, we need to be able to say, hey, use this if you're running locally, or use that if you're running in Heroku, right? And we'll deal with that in a minute. I just want to show you an explicit call to the Node.js server that is going to host our data. Okay, we're going to ask for, since this is a data call, we want to retrieve just JSON data, not HTML or CSS, nothing static. We want dynamic content, dynamic data. We're going to prepend this call with API, again, to distinguish it from static calls, right? We're going to say here that, did we prepend all the other ones? I forget. Let me see in the services, on the server services. Okay, we didn't prepend those. Okay, so it's API and then the actual data type that we're asking for, right? So this will be API. And we want for the following user with a particular user ID argument followed by the website. Okay, so that's the URL. That's the URL where I want to go, which currently doesn't exist. Right? There's nobody listening on the server side for this request. Okay, so it's going to fail. It's going to come back with a 404. The server's going to come back. There's nothing mapped to that URL, right? We'll build that in a minute. I just want to show you the communication. So now that I have the URL, we can say URL. I'm going to pass the URL, and let's see what happens here. If I refresh, oops, why is this so big? Okay, now nobody has subscribed to this, right? Until now, nobody subscribed to this event. The promise won't actually execute. So let's do that. Let's subscribe to this. We'll say map. This is eventually is going to come back with a response of type response from the server. Angular HTTP, yeah, that one. So load that. There we go. Response. And when the response comes back, I just want to display it. We can do a console log response. And okay, I still need to. Okay, so this, we're going to return this, the response. Presumably, it's the list of all websites, which again doesn't exist just yet, right? We're going to return it to the whoever wants this. In this case, it would be the component that wants to render these websites. We're going to return. Hopefully, it's a JSON object, and we're going to return this. Okay, instead of returning the hard-coded list of websites, we're going to return this to the component that is asking for the websites for the user. Let's go back here. Now, this has become an asynchronous call. This is going to go out to the server, right? And what this is going to return is not, notice that this has two different returns. The first return is going to be a promise, meaning, hey, this is going to take me a while. It's going to take me a couple milliseconds. So don't wait for me, right? Register with me a callback and go about your business, go do something else, and when the response comes back, I will notify you. I will pass you the data. I will call you back with whatever function you give me. All right? So let's do that. On the controller, this no longer is going to be a synchronous call, right? It's going to immediately return to me the data that I want. Instead, what this first return is returning a promise. Okay, so that's why it's complaining, right? We are declaring websites as type website array, but what's coming back is instead is a promise object, right? That instead what it's going to allow me to do is subscribe to whatever the promise at some point is resolved, right? So we're going to refactor this, and the find, what it returns is a promise which has a function to subscribe to that promise, right? So that function returns a promise that is an object that has a function called subscribe that allows me to register a callback, anonymous function, right? That when the response comes back, hopefully that response will be websites, which I would like to assign to my local websites. Okay? All right. Obviously, this is not working just yet. If we go back, we'll continue here. Right? Notice that it's complaining, saying that, notice the 404. See that? It went out to the server. I went to the server to API, like you told me, I went to API user 123 website, but there was nothing there. The server came back with a 404. There's nothing mapped to that URL. Okay, we go to the network, notice that indeed, here's the request. Here's the request that the browser generated. It was a GET, right? This is the URL that I wanted to go to, right? And the server never responded. It came back, the server responded immediately with a 404. That URL is not mapped to any resource. Make sense? Right? It is now we're now going to go to the server and implement the response, right, on the server side. Right? But we're done on the client side. The client side is all set. Right? It's just waiting for the server to be able to respond something. Notice that if I change this to be instead 345, right? Notice that the call is also fails, but notice the query it would go to user/345. Yes. So depending on what profile or website list we go to, depending on the user, we'll come back with different arrays of different collections of websites. Make sense? All right. So now let's focus on implementing the server side. All right. So let's do that.